Gribas, and welcome to the Orc Fort podcast. I'm your host, Xu'rek, and today is the fourth episode. And for this episode, I have Mr., or should I say, Sir Adontis of the Sir Knights Guild. Adontis and I go way back on our characters, and we've had a ton of fun role-playing within Outlines, and we thought it'd be a great idea to share with you all the awesome relationship that exists between the Orc and Knight role-players. So join us by grabbing a bottle of grog, sharpening that blood axe, and heading down into the Orc Fort. Catch a seat next to the campfire and enjoy today's episode. All right, Adontis, welcome to the Orc Fort podcast, man. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about which non-orc to invite, and you were like my top 5, you know what I mean? And so you were up there. I think there's a little bit of interesting lore and history there that we can get into in today's episode. But before we get started, I want to give you a chance to sort of formally introduce yourself to the listener.
Thank you. My name is Adontis in the game. I've played Ultima Online since 1998, basically, shortly after it came out. Funny enough, on the Great Lakes server, I was part of a group of people called Silverblades. We were a bunch of knights that ran around fighting orcs. So I did roleplay back then, and then I've played on a lot of different servers, never as major as I got into Outlands. And after I got a little bored with Outlands after a while, I decided that I should probably jump back into the RP scene, and I found the Sir Guild, and it's just been amazing ever since.
So you're a long time. I mean, were you role playing back? You said it was the Silver Knights.
Yes, or sorry, Silver Blades.
Silver Blade. Okay, but y'all were kind of like knights back then.
Yes, yeah. Okay. I've been role playing since then. I've played Dungeons and Dragons and dozens of other RPGs since I was 8 years old. For about a decade, I owned and ran a LARP company. So RPing has just been in my blood for a long time.
And I could tell because, one thing I want to do, now that we kind of gave yourself a bit of a background, long-term UO player, but even with the long-term players, Adontis, my encounters, so for the listener, Adontis belongs to the Sir Knights Guild, which are our arch nemesis, well, one of the, I guess, right? Is that fair to say?
Right. Yeah, that's fair to say.
But what I love the most, and I want to say this before I forget it, because it's one of the reasons why I wanted you on, is because in-game, we're big enemies, but we have pretty strict rules of engagement that we all follow and respect, and I absolutely love that, man. It makes for such great opportunity for us to really explore RP between us without, getting over that res kill where you just, that's where all the problems start.
Yeah, I agree. It's some of my favorite moments are when I'm just out doing some PVM or farming or whatever it is, or I'm just hanging out in Hailstone, which is where the Sir Guild is based. And I'm not really doing anything. I'm not planning on doing any RP. And then I see 3 or 4 orcs roll up. And I'm like, well, my plans just got changed. And I always have a blast going out there. I also appreciate, our squires all freak out every time you guys do that.
They're like, oh my God, the orcs are here.
Yeah, there's 4 reds outside. What do we do? And I'm like, you talk to them. That's it's one of the reasons I love it is because you see the squires, if you watch, they'll be on the palisade up top, looking down, and eventually they'll make their way outside and realize we're not enemies out of game. This is what we're here to do. We're to role play with each other, and it might end in a fight, and there might be a couple deaths, but that's just part of it. It's part of the role play. There's a reason why we hate each other so much,
Yeah, no, and that hatred runs deep from a role play sense. And for anyone listening, I think in a previous episode of Adontis, I had Nerul on, and we talked about kind of like the old days and how pre-Discord, pre-voice chat, things were a little different, right? But I think with us, and for the most part, and it could lead to both ways, I think it's an avenue for toxicity, right? Discord, general chat, and PvP chat, and all that stuff. But also, it's a way to say, hey, these two guilds can really sort of build on one another and lean on one another for each other's RP. I mean, there's no light without dark. Orcs need tin cans, or we call you guys tin cans, right? Because you're yummy inside and layered in tin. But orcs without knights to fight, knights without evil creatures to fight. It just doesn't. We need each other, man.
Absolutely. And we're a small group inside already a small group. So we all have similar interest in role play inside of the niche game of Ultima Online. Of course, we'd be friends outside the game. We share a very specific interest.
Yeah, and just so for the listener who doesn't know, we have, and and a lot of these are just ideals, but a lot of them we're pretty strict about. If me and Adontis, for example, if I'm rolling with 3 orcs and he's rolling with 2 knights and a squire, and we run into each other, and let's say our RP encounter ends in PvP, which oftentimes it does. We have a rule where we don't loot the enemy, we don't res kill. In fact, we try to res the enemy whenever possible. And we try to protect them. And if we're having an RP engagement and a non-RPer comes by, I probably love that the most, Adontis. We're just like instantly stop the RP and just charge the enemy, charge the non-RPer.
That I've always enjoyed that. There was a tavern night where we had some brigands around. Naomi was a brigand at the time. There was like 2 or 3 orcs, 2 or 3 brigands, and like 4 or 5 knights all hanging out at the tavern. And Naomi had left, and she came back in death robes. And she's like, I just got killed by a red outside. And a ton of brigands and orcs and knights all mounted up together, and we chased this person all the way across. It was about a 15-minute horseback chase before we finally killed them and got all our stuff back.
No, it's a really community. It's a really a real community, and we, I'll give another quick example for the listener. We had set up an event where we were going to just sort of be belligerent in Hellstone, which is Sir's Player Town. And, what we do, we'll just give them a heads up and say, hey, on this date and time, we're going to be there. It doesn't mean we have to ask for permission or anything, but it's just common courtesy. Right. And, man, it runs so smoothly. It's great because we give y'all a heads up. Some of your guys show up, and then we got a bigger fight, a better engagement, if you will.
Yeah, because if you show up and there's one squire hiding inside, that's not going to be as much fun for anybody. But if there's forewarning, we show up not to stop you, but to elevate you. Right. That's one of the things I love the most about the Orcs is that you all are it feels much more spontaneous. I feel like you guys are sitting around the Orc fort and 3 you get together and be like, hey, you want to go mess with the knights a little bit? And then just show up outside our door.
Yeah, and just like scream and stuff, and just throw beer cans everywhere. But, actually, you said our RP community is pretty small. I really don't play any other games. I don't know about you, but UO is pretty much the only game I play now. It's certainly the only fantasy or roleplay game I play. Yeah. But why do you think I consider it thriving? I mean, relative to, sure. My relativity's small. I mean, I have nothing really to lean on, but it seems like we got a pretty good community here, man. It seems that way.
Absolutely. As far as by percentage, I do think that this has got one of the highest percentage of role players to non-role players of any MMO I've ever played.
Even like other servers, like UO Forever, or whatever, one of the Angel Island, those.
I didn't get involved in any of the roleplay servers then. I got involved in the roleplay on OSI, but I never got involved on UO Forever, UO Second Age, or any of the other private servers, just because I wasn't really invested in them. It was scratching an itch that I needed scratched, which was I needed to play some Ultima Online. Right. But I never got too deep with the guilds. No one ever really pulled me in like that. And Outlands was, with the changes they've made, I got involved in the PVM aspect, and that kind of led me back around to the roleplay aspect, because every time I saw orcs running around, it reminded me back of 1998, 1999, when we would run into their orc fort and we'd cast firewall everywhere and pretend like we're burning the place down.
Yeah, no, and those are the best times, man. And it's sort of in a way, a lot of these things are blessings and they're curses, right? So like Outlands has given us a true end game, actually multiple end games, right? And so it gives you something PVM wise to work towards. That's a great system, I think, and it's a beautiful thing that they did on Outlands. Part of the reason why I'm here. But I always say this, at the same time, it compromises a little bit of what we do in RP, because we're competing for minutes in game, right? We're for attention player span in game. If I'm saying, hey, I'm running a quest for squires to go venture into the forest and seek, whatever, It's not going to yield them any gold. It's not going to yield them any XP. It's not going to give them aspect. It's not going to give them chain. It's not going
Yep.
to rare loot chance or whatever the hell's going on. You know what I mean? It does none of that. So it's one of those things I always kind of gripe about, if you will, is that we're competing for this attention. And but you know what? We have an active server and we get plenty of attention. So I'm kind of happy with the status quo.
I agree. That I've called that the problem of efficiency.
Right.
Is that a player in a lot of games will do the most efficient path, even if it's not fun for them. So the most efficient path for like gaining XP and everything is not role playing, because you don't gain any that way. So you need a certain person who is willing to put any advancement on pause just to have fun. And for me, I'm here to only have fun. Like,
right.
Why would I put my fun on pause to go do something else that is fun? Like, I do enjoy the bossing and the omnis and the just dungeoning. Like, I like just sitting down in an area and just grinding for a while. But it's more fun to go do something else. Choose the more fun.
Yeah, and I've always said that our goal, and I think you guys probably share a similar kind of ideal, is that we prioritize the. It isn't that we prioritize the RP. We always say we prioritize the adventure, because it's whatever you make of it. You know what I mean? It's whatever it is for you, and that's the most important thing. But you know, I want to call you out a little bit, Adontis.
Bring it on.
You are the biggest orc hater I've ever in game. The biggest. Your character,
yes.
The knight, is so mean, bro. He hates us so much. Why?
This is not something most people know. There is actually an answer to, because Adonis doesn't talk about it. Not to knights. There's about, I'd say, just one person in the Knights Guild who actually knows. I play it off as a joke often. I'm mean enough that where I feel the need to reach out on Discord anytime I finish like a role play with the orcs and be like, "Hey, love you guys." Like, don't take that guy seriously. Adonis
but dude, I gotta give you credit, man, and because we'll do so for the listener, we might run an event. I think we did one. You were there for my Snotling school children little event that we did.
Yes. Yeah, that was one of my favorite interactions with the Orcs.
Yeah, basically I made all the Orcs get on their Snotling, which is our entry level dumb baby orc with the bucket helmet, and we were sent on a mission. I think Wildlands has just dropped, an expansion had just dropped, so I RP'd it as like my main character, the captain. All my real orcs were out fighting real wars in Outland, so all I had was this shitty group of snotlings, the leftovers, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I asked them to go to Hellstone and like do a reconnaissance mission or something like that. And I think you guys bribed us with like 50 gold or something and some cheese.
Yeah, I love that the orcs always rise. It doesn't really matter what it is. If it's shiny food or beer, then that's the values are relevant.
Yeah, and we did such a good job, because as we were creeping in, like one of the two snotlings would be like, "Hey, are y'all sure this is a good idea?" And we're all be like, "Shut up, you know, we're getting cheese, like this is awesome." But anyways, I say all that because during the event, Adontis, you were there, and the whole time you were in the corner just like smirking, like smart mouthing, you know, just mad that these creatures, these vile creatures are here. It was the best, man. It adds a real, because in my head, like, if it was like a series or a movie, there would be a character like, surely there's always a character like that, you know?
Right.
You're that
He's
character.
A hater. And the reason why he has issues with orcs is, so whenever I made Adonis, I knew I wanted to make a character for a role play, and I almost reached out to the Orcs actually.
No, we dropped the ball, man.
No, it wasn't. I'm bad at PvP. It's the reason why I chose to be a knight instead. Which is hilarious because he talks so much crap and he's always willing to throw down. I'm just not good at it. I need to work on it so I can back up what my character says. So it's like, all right, I want this character to be a knight. I wanted him to be very chivalrous. I've described him as a golden retriever who dabbles in murder. Like, he's just a very outgoing, happy to help people guy, except when it comes to Orcs. I wanted a flaw somewhere.
Right.
And
so we kind of get under your skin, right? Like, I could tell, like,
absolutely,
like it's this noble knight who's great, and he's this knight in shining armor, but he just sees these creatures and he's just like disgusted, you know, and he does vile things to us, man.
And it's because whenever he was younger, so he's approaching 50 at this point, he's getting on in years. He was a soldier when he was in his 20s, retired, became a farmer, and then kept watching the next generation get sent off into wars or battles and die. And he decided that he needed to do something about it, and he went and joined Sir. But the war he was in was against orcs, and I fought for Andaria, and they are not a great government. And so he was sent into orc encampments and killed more than combatants. Like he has killed women, he's killed children, people who, looking back on it, he has a lot of regret for, or he would if he hasn't convinced himself Orcs aren't people. Like they can't be, because if they were capable of rational thought, if they were capable of being good people, what does that make him now?
Right.
So he can't cope with, if I can't hate orcs. And I know I keep saying Urk and Orc interchangeably here, and I'm sorry if that's driving any listeners crazy.
For the listener,
but
our guild tag in game is Urk. So when they see us, they say Urks. There's others that are Orcs and other Orcs, but we're all just different types of Orcs, if you will.
Yeah. So he hates them because if he doesn't, he has to come to terms with what he did. And he's had a couple moments where he's gotten close to that. And he has drank himself stupid so that he forgets those moments.
I think, dude, after that event, which is, now that you say that, it makes total sense, because even when the orcs do something that can be seen objectively as a little bit of a breakthrough when it comes to the goodness, if you will, albeit a small one, you find some way to like, no, that they're only doing that because of XYZ. Yep. and now that you do it, it makes sense, man. Wow, what a character, dude. That's awesome.
Well, thank you. I wanted him to hate orcs, but I didn't want him to be like orcs murdered my family. Like, which there's a lot of good characters who have that backstory. I just didn't want to be one of them.
Yeah, and I think I remember in that classroom one of the snotlings, I think he drew like a tree or like a shitty rendition of a tree, if you remember, and like
I do.
And one of the Serb people were like, "Wow, look, they can be changed," and you're like, "Absolutely not." But then you wrote a story in the Discord. I still remember you wrote a story about when you went to sleep and you're just like downing a bottle of ale, right? Because you saw it and you don't want to deal with it. Now it makes sense, dude. That's awesome.
Exactly. I still have so one of the drop that you can get. I think it's from a progressive or something. Is a bloody note. I went because he wrote that in his blood. It was Slobber is the one who did it.
That's right. Slobber did it. That's right.
Yep. And Adontis went back with a piece of paper and pushed it, because he wrote it on his desk, because orcs can't use paper. That would be insane. He pushed the paper into the desk so it transferred like the writing onto the piece of paper. And at my home on my bookshelf, it's one of my decor is a bloody note. And that represents Slobber's name that he wrote. And it's tucked away, but at some point in time, Adontis is going to have to come to terms with that. Yeah. Like that's a plot point that I've got in the future that I'm not sure when I pull the trigger on, because I don't know what he looks like as a character after he has to deal with that.
No, that's I think it's important, and I'll call myself out on it because I'm a big proponent in restrictions and like sort of guiding people through certain roles in a more structured format. But stories like that are the bread and butter to our guilds, I think, because you can say, you can RP, you can be whatever you want. Is really, even if you're an orc or a knight, your guy's like a murderer of orcs, apparently, you know what I mean, and has PTSD and has all these issues, and it's a whole story you're writing on your own individually,
Yeah, and that's why I love interacting with you all, because I want to discover who this character is gonna be. I know where he came from. I know where he is right now for the most part. I learned I really like Ratman. When a Ratman showed up at Tavern the other day, it didn't know that about him until like I was presented with an opportunity to figure out how do I feel about Ratman. And I thought the better choice would be to use that his interactions with other monstrous races who can speak to hold a light against how he treats orcs. So I was very like cordial in talking to him, because I've been down to Colony in Time, which there are orcs who are guards down in Time, and I think one of them's a blacksmith. There's there's non-hostile orcs down there, which was another moment that Adonis had a drink until he decided he didn't need to think about it anymore.
Yeah, like wait, some of these guys are good.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's a problem because they are. We've got 2 orc knights, which one of them just got knighted into from a squire into being a knight, and you all showed up. I wasn't able to make it that night, but I didn't know how I was going to behave with that. Like
Yeah,
I knew I couldn't make it, so I didn't give it much thought. But I thought about logging in for the knighting and just staying in the castle, like pointedly not being there for the knighting of the orc.
yeah. It's, for the listener, I mean, can you kind of explain what that process looks like? I know I have an idea from just my association, but what does it mean to become a knight in the Sir Knights Guild anyway?
So everyone starts as a squire when you first come in, and we'll outfit you, we'll help you unlock your aspect, which is a progression system, and then we don't have it nearly as rigid as the orcs do or Urk does, which I really respect and I really like it. Like I think you guys have what's called the scar system, where you go to events and you earn these points and you advance the ranks that way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we use the squires mainly as a vibe check more than anything. Like we don't need them to prove anything at this point, other than that they're gonna mesh with the community, because that's the most important part. We can teach somebody to PVM, we can teach somebody to PvP, we can teach somebody to roleplay. But if they're not going to vibe with the community, that's more precious than anything, is to protect uh, everyone getting along, protect those vibes. So after somewhere between 2 weeks to 4 weeks, they'll become a knight, and we go out to a bridge that's in Hailstone. We call it the Ceremony Bridge. And there's a full ceremony, which depending on who's doing the knighting, I do a lot of them. And so I have different scripts, and I look into the person's background and the stories that they've been telling, and like I call out their deeds and their virtues and what they're aligned to. And then we knight them. They give a speech, and we go do something called Loot the Recruit, which I'm not going to get the details here because we don't tell the squires what it is either.
Okay, yeah, keep it a surprise.
And with the name Loot the Recruit, all of them assume that they're going to get attacked, and I'm not going to say whether they're right or not.
I can tell you what we do with an event called Loot the Recruit.
I guarantee it. So we do that, and then there's generally like some celebration, or we might go do some bosses afterwards. But it's just kind of, it's their moment.
Yeah, and you guys get some crowds, man. I mean, the support for these ceremonies is huge. And I can post production show. I'll be showing a picture right now of some of those ceremonies. Okay. I'll put up 2 or 3 of them. But
awesome.
Yeah, you guys get a crowd, and it's respectful because it's different than what we do. But it's awesome to see, and y'all's community is pretty strong because every time there's you guys are PVMing or whether it be RP stuff. I mean, y'all got a pretty sizable guild over there.
Yeah, because of the vibe check, so to speak, I don't have any issues going out and grouping with any one of them. If anybody's like, hey, I want to group up and do this thing, I know I'm going to get along with them. Like, I don't need to be like, well, this is so and so, which I found that in some other guilds where in the LARPing community we call it your squeaky stare or your broken stare, where it's something not like it's a known problem or problem person that no one talks about. And it's very important to us not to have those broken stairs. And the reason why it's called that is in the community, in LARPing, you're out in the woods and wilderness, and there's often like bridges or stairs. And if one of them's broken, if you've been there for 5 years, you know to step over it. But if a new person goes, they can hurt themselves. So a new person coming into your community, if everybody knows, hey, Adontis is, it's not a nice person. He's just kind of been here a long time, so we deal with him. If you got to give warnings like that, that's not good.
Yeah, that's your squeaky step or whatever. That's your.
So it drives off new players, and we just don't have any of those in the Knights Guild, and because of that, I love grouping with any one of them. Everybody is ready to just go do anything. If we get on and say, hey, who wants to do bosses? A bunch of people will show up. If we want to go do some RP, a bunch of people will show up. I really enjoy that about it.
And you guys offer a pretty big variety of sort of ways to enjoy the game. I think a lot of people, when they think of RP guilds, we probably get characterized as we're just sitting around, just doing a bunch of dialogue. Which I mean, sometimes it's fair. That's a fair,
Sure.
whatever.
Every Tuesday.
But a lot of the times it's quite the opposite. And what we have, what I find anyway, and something I see, and you can agree or disagree here, but I see it in my guild and perhaps in your guild, is that we start to build a sort of common bond around a certain theme that we all sort of appreciate, and these guilds are more than just a guild to us. You see new guilds pop up all the time, Adontis, whatever name, the
Yeah.
Society of Cool Kids, the biggest ops in Outlands, BOO, whatever, it's just like,
Yeah.
these pop up left and right. And I always wonder what keeps them together, because I'm imagining their success keeps them together, right? Like looting
Yeah.
the bosses, omnis, these sorts of things keep them together. Call outs, raids, boating, the success in game. But there's no real glue than like ours that keeps us together. We have something bigger than ourselves, bigger than pixels. We start to build up a subculture, if you will, that's pretty freaking cool to see.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there's a lot of guilds that they're there to down bosses, get the best gear, have the highest damage, and there's nothing wrong with engaging in the game that way, or any game. If that's where you find your fun, that's great. Uh, and some people bond over that, or they find like-minded people in it, and I'm sure they're just as good of friends as anybody that I've made in Sir. But I really do treasure a lot of those bonds I've made in Sir, over the past year and change that I've been a member of it, and outside it, like Payne Stone Dust as a brigand. That my first interaction with him was getting shook down in Scarlet Monastery. There's my WoW coming out, in Shadowspire Cathedral. And it was just such a cool moment that I reached out to him, and now he and I talk back and forth at times. Because we all have that, like you said, that bond that in common, that glue that binds all of us together. And you mentioned earlier PVM taking away from RPing, and you're not wrong. Every boss run you get 20 people together is an RP event that could have been 20 people,
Right.
But I do think that there are plenty of people who are somewhat interested in role play, but are either kind of scared to go in because there's a vulnerability to doing role play.
Right,
You're
man,
opening
it's
yourself
big.
up to ridicule, and like it feels hard when you first start. So people are scared to do it. But hey, this is a guild that doesn't ask too much of it, and they do bosses and omnis and team mapping and all this PVM content that you can do, and then they slowly come over to the role play side. And that's why I think our PVM is very valuable to Sir, because it keeps people interested and gets those players who might not have ever joined an RP guild into role play.
Yeah, and let's face it, even the RPers love grinding here and there and
Oh
leveling
yeah,
up and all that. I mean, I can't pretend like we don't. To probably not to the same extent, but it's certainly there.
yeah, absolutely. I got real into boating there for a little bit, and I love the fact that on the water, like Orcs and Sir are just thick as thieves. I, I sent pictures to the guild because one of the members of Urk couldn't use the dockmaster that we were at, and if he recalled to a close one, it was going to reset a timer. You got to wait a couple minutes before you can get back on the boat. So I had him jump on my ship, and I sailed him over so that he could use a dockmaster that was close by. And I was the whole way just giving him crap. He was, I was like, just stand in the corner, don't touch anything. And he's over there farting on my sailors, like eating and throwing bottles everywhere. It was just a fun moment. So I love that there's a non confrontational way that I get to involve myself with the Urks, that could produce those kinds of moments.
Yeah, for the listeners, if you're a Outlands player, you'll know, but Sir and Urk are in the boating alliance together, and that's a whole nother probably episode there, Adontis.
Yeah.
But basically, I think it solidifies that we both share a common interest, and I love having the opposing guild. You guys are the good guys in the plate mail suits. We're in the dingy ring mail, and we're somewhere lies in between. Now, you mentioned, I know we talked about this. I'm trying to think We talked about the school day one. That was hilarious, dude. My guys on voice chat were just cracking up, laughing the whole time as that was happening.
I was
But
as well.
can you think of any other? I mean, I know we've had quite a few clashes. I think you've been to some of the RP PvP events I've done, right?
Oh yes, like I think the most recent one that I showed up at was the Christmas one, where we were trying to deliver uh, goods and cookies and blankets down to a town, and of course the orcs showed up and killed the caravan and took all the cookies and then attacked us because they thought we had more.
You were just running around screaming cookies and
Yeah,
orcish or whatever.
yeah,
And I think things like that, these events are. I mean, we orchestrate them ahead of time, and because we have this mutual respect and understanding, it really creates the sort of space for us to do those types of events. We also do other ones where we rampage through dungeons. That's probably that's probably a different deal. But it's just I'm all about creating different avenues where if there's a mutual respect, then that can be done. You know.
yeah. I've gotten caught in your guys' blood moon more than once. That tide of orc reds just rolling through the dungeons. I had no idea what was going on the first time. And
Yeah,
someone
you know
in
what's
there was
funny
like,
is
"Yep."
that we always so for the listener we do this thing, and we've recently rebranded it because we're trying to step away from the mindless PKing. So
Mhm.
we're trying to get a little bit more creative with it. It's now called Blood Rock Night, but yes, what we do is we spam the roleplay channel in Discord for Outlands with a blood moon, a red moon, and that to us is signaling to anybody that's in our community, hey, we may be rampaging through a dungeon, and we take no prisoners at this time. So
Yep.
it's fun and all that, but we are, and this may be of interest to you. We are trying to sort of rebrand that. Our goal is to never be seen as just PKers. We never want to be seen as
Right.
just kill on sight. The biggest problem there is that if five red orcs run into Nucero too, what do you think? Any human that sees us is gonna fucking instantly hit the gate. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
interaction can't be there.
Yeah. I try whenever I see like red uh, Urks down in the dungeons, and I see people running from them. I try to engage them in conversation, and I'll see as like blues start hanging around a little bit after that. They don't really get involved too much, but my hope is by doing that, that they will understand. Oh, he's here to talk. There's a story I could get out of this. I
Yeah.
don't have to run from this guild. I
Oh,
don't know if
we've
that
had big
helps at all.
we've had big success with we do like toll booths, and so we set up toll
Hmm.
booths in dungeons, and those have been pretty good. Where we don't now, if a guy tells us to f off and or whatever, or attacks us, then obviously we would have to fight back. But
Absolutely.
but yeah, no, the toll booths have been great ways to interact with them. Memorable
Yeah.
for sure, and we hope to kind of change it in that regard. So more different kind of creative ways to interact with the server is the long term goal for us. But let me ask you this while I got you here, Adontis.
Sure.
What do you see kind of as where do you see Sir going from here? I mean, you guys are already big. You got a custom guild house. I guess an island is next, but aside from the island, like in game lore wise,
Uh,
what do you hope for the next year for the Sir Knights?
the next year, so not to get into it, but the Blue Alliance, as people call it, or the Good Alliance, we just went through some changes as far as who all's aligned to who, because there was some confusion with how the alliance worked out. It's not worth getting into, but it does mean that our alliance is a bit smaller than it was. Our ability to like respond to callouts is smaller. So I think for the next year, our goal is going to be to try to grow roleplay on the server, and to build up an alliance with that kind of focus. So we'll be focusing kind of more inward in that regard. Uh, and to maybe there's been talk about like us trying to push a little bit into time again. We used to back in the day, but it fell off because time is no joke.
Yeah,
So
especially with the
I'd like,
different with the changes, right?
yeah, with that scaling, it's pretty rough. I used to be able to do a lot of the level one mobs, but now not so many. Uh, but I foresee us really focusing on the role play aspect and like bring it back to the core of that.
And how do we do that? I mean, I always ask this to everybody I speak with. How do we promote it? How do we get the person who's kind of into it but thinks it's kind of weird, maybe, or maybe it's too hard for them? how do we? I mean, is it just publicity? Is it doing things like this podcast, doing events? I mean, what do you think the way forward is?
I don't think there's any silver bullet, but I do think the things you listed are it. Like just making it known that these are just normal people having a great time. There's nothing weird going on here because some people think that about role players incorrectly. Although some of the role players are weird, but
Fair enough.
find me a find me a group that isn't.
Yeah, go to general chat and tell me those guys
Yeah,
aren't weird.
exactly. So I've had people like I spent a lot of time in new player chat there for a little bit. I need to get back into it to be honest. And people would reach out to me afterwards and be like, "Hey, do you have a guild?" I was like, "Well, if you're interested in role play." And Mordrin, I don't know if you are familiar with him. He's
Yeah.
become a very active member. And he joined us because we were chatting in new player. He had a bunch of questions. He was a build that I was very familiar with, so we started chatting in private messages. And now he's the admiral to our fleet.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
and we've got Warner the guard. A lot of people don't realize that the guard in Shelter Dungeon is not an NPC. That
yeah.
is ran by Sir.
First interaction Adontis with Sir officially would be that guy when I first got on, and I was like,
Yep.
I definitely thought. Although the latest patch kind of nuked him, right?
Yeah, but from what I understand, they are going to be changing it to where he'll function again. Not just him, but the whole
he's
dungeon.
an icon to the server, bro. Everyone has seen. What's his name?
That we've had two over the years. I can't remember the first one, but I think it's Warner now is his name.
Warner. Yeah,
He's hit Glorious
legend.
Lord off Mongbats.
Yeah, just taunting Mongbats left and right, dude.
And the admins of the server will actually get messages when he's offline. It'll be reported as a bug that the guard in Shelter Dungeon is gone. And he just has to send back. Owen sends back every time. He's like, "That's not us. That's a player." But stuff like that, it puts your name out there. It lets people understand that there is a guild out there just willing to help people. We don't gain anything by running that bot, except for people now know who we are.
Yeah,
I go around
it's
Shelter.
good advertising, man. It's like
Yeah.
And it's right in line with you guys' RP, right? The knight, the hero helping the weak from the monsters. It fits perfectly. We need the orcs need someone on the opposite side, just like
that's what I was about to say. Somehow you guys get somebody who just runs around and trains mobs onto people or something.
Yeah,
like the
is there a script out there? Can Jace Owens write that script for me, please?
That would be amazing.
Just charge up
set
10
them on
steps, come back 10 steps, and just keep doing that.
Have them like taunt in the beginning hallway and then cast invisibility on themselves.
Oh, that'd be golden. Although, yeah, that'd be golden, man. We need to do something like that. Just mess with new players.
But I think that's where it is. Helping new players is where you get your growth from your guild. And when they see Sir, and I try to do it every time I'm out and about. Like Sir will resurrect I'm not gonna say anybody, but most anybody who dies in a dungeon. And every time I see a ghost, I resurrect them and I ask them where their body is, and I escort them back to their body, and I like kill any mobs that happen to be there, so they can get their stuff. And I think that's the best advertising you can have, is that this is a guild of people who are willing to help strangers. So how much would they help you, and how much could you help people if you were a part of that?
Yeah, and I I have a rule where I res everyone too, but I call them pansies and like just get on their asses. Like I make fun of them for dying, I do all this, but I do res them.
That's pretty awesome.
Hey, I got one more question for you, and this is kind of a big one. So I'm curious what you think as a role player and as a PVM aficionado. If you could change something about Outlands, what would it be and why?
I would make me able to win all the lotteries. Would be my big change. But
Just
barring
rig the
that,
lottery?
Yeah, barring that, the Outland server has been really good to role players in responding to like needs and wants, especially for events. Like they put that wagon that was destroyed on the Christmas event. There's a whirlpool by the bridge in Hailstone that it was added due to a story. And this is less to do with the actual server itself, but I would like if there was some kind of like formalized way for role players to put in requests for specific things like that.
Mm.
Because Sir gets some attention, I'm sure. Irk does as well, but it'd be nice for like smaller roleplay guilds to be like, "Hey, this is what I would like to have done, or temporary. Or I'm trying to do this thing. How would I get support without it just end up being spam in a Discord? You know, because I'm
Yeah.
sure they get tons of messages from tons of players.
Yeah, that man.
So,
That's a great. I've never even thought of that. I guess as a member of one of the largest evil RP guilds, we do have that luxury, right? But it's one of
yeah,
the things
we
I
get
always
that
say.
attention.
Like even as orcs, like people are like, well, you guys. I'm like, wait. I always have to correct them. Like, Bloodrock, my clan does it that way, but that doesn't mean it's the only way.
Right.
We don't own
Yep.
the trademark on being an orc in Ultima. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
In fact, there's two other pretty good sized orc guilds in Outlands active. So, it definitely would be nice for everybody to have an avenue to do it. Now, some of them are like you guys got those walls around Hellstone. Now it's pretty cool.
I was not expecting that at all. They worked so hard on that, and I cannot express my gratitude enough. I never expect anything like that. Like little things, like adding a whirlpool. That's I'm sure does not take much time. Adding those walls, those were custom designed. Like I was blown away by them. I host meetings up there when I get chances to, which is less safe because anybody can go in there. But it's just so cool. It's an opportunity I don't want to pass up.
Yeah, and for those who may be unfamiliar, if you play Outlands, Hellstone is south of Prev. So go south, go past the graveyard. You're gonna hit that little turn before you hit a bridge. Before you hit that bridge, just go straight south, and you're gonna run into Hellstone. But now you'll see the gate, right? You hit the gate first, the walls, and that'll let you know that you're entering Hellstone, the player rundown.
Yep. And at any point in time, feel free to go in there, and any member of Sir, go up. We'll be happy to talk to you about the game, like getting you in or just role play with you. We try to do emergent role play like that with people as they come by.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that. And Adontis, I want to thank you, man, for coming. Well, I want to thank you for just being the disgruntled orc hating knight because it makes all these interactions way more fun. There's and like you, there's many others in Sir, and it's always a blast to RP with you guys and just man, we've had so many brawls and events throughout the years. I'm hoping for way more, man.
I agree. Hopefully, I'll get better at PvP, and I'll give you a run for your money at some day instead of just dying.
I'll send you a script, man. Just click play and then just run around. You'll be good. All right, Adontis, take care, man. Thanks for coming. Have a good one.
Thanks so much. You have a good one too. Thank you for having me.
All right, well, that does it for this episode. I do want to say thank you to Adontis from the Sir Knights Guild and everyone over there. It was an awesome episode. We got to go over a lot and really highlight his skills as a role player. We are lucky to have him in our community. And I look forward to future conversations like this. Any ideas, suggestions, people I should talk to, send them my way. Xu'rek in Discord or anyone in the Bloodrock clan. Thank you, and Nugra.